Hi everyone, this is Julien Pahud with Eli Lilly. Very sorry first for missing the panel earlier on today, but my firewall blocked any access to the session. I think we are all digital, but that's what happens when we try to improvise on the go. But as I expected that the situation would happen as well for my presentation, I thought that it would be safer to go on the rush and record it. So also very sorry that this presentation is not live, but it's just recorded a mere 1 hour before it's actually broadcasted. But I think it's much better to at least have something rather than a no-show at the last minute. So again, my apologies, but I'm very excited to be back in the next event. And this time, I will have a slightly different presentation. So my name is Julien Pahud, working with Eli Lilly as a lead for digital health and innovation. And actually, for this presentation today, I will have two different hats. And definitely my digital health professional and enthusiast hat, but also my patient's hat. And we are all patients. And what I try to do is, experience what I'm working on. And since I started working in digital health, and arguably even before, I was always trying to leverage technology to support my health and to get the best and optimal outcomes. So this presentation today will be based on really my personal journey. So here I'm talking as a patient, and what I say might not represent the views of Eli Lilly, but this is my perspective, my journey as a patient, and especially as a patient, just to be very transparent, is actually almost to the day 2 years ago, I had, like many of us, COVID. But actually, it turned out to be, for me, a long COVID. So all along the way, in those last 2 years, I tried to leverage digital health as a way to help me deal with long COVID. So let's start almost a chronological journey along these last 2 years. And the first part of digital health, which is perhaps the one that's one of the most obvious use case, but the first one that was really of help to me was really, using wearables in daily life, and wearables can have different use. And one that's very tangible is, accident prevention. So, you might have your app detecting if you have fallen. You might have your device flagging if you are having an abnormal heart rate. So all those type of really specific elements, specific time point alerts that will allow you to seek special care at that moment. Actually, as a fun fact, I realized that I had a couple of times the high heart rate alert, but it was not due to anything else, that I was just watching a sport event and I was overly excited. But again, that shows that those devices work and actually pick those abnormalities. And here in my early journey following my COVID, couple of weeks later, I was still struggling to recover. Had a very severe cough. Had trouble breathing, and as I was trying to get back to normal life, I thought that I would use a device to measure my blood oxygen saturation, which was for me a good proxy to see, am I doing okay? Can I do something, or do I need to take extra rest? And that has been proven pretty successful, because at one moment, when I was actually driving my car, suddenly my device starting buzzing very hard, giving me an alert that my oxygen sat was dropping very low, and it just allowed me. This alert allowed me to pull up. To pull up side of the road before I started being very close to fainting. And without that alert, I might not have had the opportunity to take the necessary action. I could have had an accident. I could have endangered other people. So really, I think this is just a personal example, but it has helped many people. This is really one of the easy use case area where wearables are already very directly and concretely helping patients. Then, as I was starting and continuing to recover, I also, and by training, I'm a data guy. So being a data enthusiast, I was very excited about the data, the health data that all our devices generate. And the assumption, the theory that we have in digital health is by being able to measure, to generate real world data at the moment of either acute events or continuously in a normal daily life setting versus the very different clinical setting of being with your HCP, etc., in the clinic where it's you get measured at time X, which might not be representative of the actual situation of where you actually are. So this is a very exciting prospect for digital health, being able to generate that data and inform meaningful conversation with HCPs. Well, actually, this one was proving much more challenging that I expected, because as I was starting to get follow-up visits with my primary care physician, then also going to the hospital for following checkups, etc. Every time I was very diligently coming and bringing all the data that had generated from the previous weeks, different measurables, etc. And it was very frustrating for me because the data was never even looked at a single time. It was very often dismissed as, oh yeah, no, but we don't know the device that generated it. It's a gimmick. It might not be reliable, or anyway, I still prefer to do my own measuring by myself at that time, and it could generate very, very difficult discussions at moment when, if, especially when you are having an almost chronic disease, but you are not having an episode, and at the moment you are for your exam, you are doing fine, your measurables are fine, well, you don't have a health issue. And if you are not able to bring this data from those episodes, it's very difficult. And here, and I will come back to that later on, because for me that's one of the key elements of this learning and this patient journey is, if it is difficult for me as a digital health professional, as a data guy, so I can explain, and trust me, I did really what the data was, how reliable the measure were, etc. If that was already super difficult for me to have those conversations, to bring it simply to be able to enter that type of dialogue, well, you can imagine that for a layman patient, that would be borderline impossible. They would perhaps just try once and then never again continue leveraging this technology, etc. So one thing that's a key learning, and for me it was very eye-opening as a digital health professional, is that it's not only about developing the technology, it's not only about basically the input that we create, but really it's also a lot of work in awareness, in education, in explaining, driving this acceptance about those type of tools. The very tangible, concrete, and positive experience coming from the alerts from the wearable. So this kind of high stress moment, accident, versus the long-term perspective, which was much more difficult. We see that it's a multifaceted situation. So that was really for me the second moment. Then as I started, as my lungs started to recover, at least the acute part. So the inflammation was starting to be gone. Steroids had done their work. X-rays were showing that my lungs were clearing and the inflammation was reducing. Then what I tried to do is starting the long roads towards recovery by leveraging some companion apps. Some of those coaching programs. So again, we are here in the more wellness side of digital health, but it's still health and it's still digital. And really the idea here was, okay, can I leverage the data? Can I use those type of apps, companion and tool to help me get back on track? Because I really, in the 6 months that happened between me contracting COVID for the first time and getting, I would say, clear signs of the state of my lungs. During those 6 months, I had lost a lot of fitness. Just before I caught COVID, I had a run, not well, but I still had a run over 1,000 kilometers in 2020. Actually, the lockdowns and less travels were helping me on that, so I was pretty proud. And then the first time I wanted to start running again in the second semester of 2021, I could barely do a couple of kilometers. And I thought leveraging those apps and the data would be helping. And it was good at the beginning, especially ensuring that you never go in the red zone. So at any stage where it might re-trigger inflammation. Also see how the thresholds, for instance, of the VO2 max were going. Are they improving or are they plateauing in order to be able to steer that? And here, the learning on that part was also quite interesting for me, in the sense that the tech is very much there. The apps that are there are very good functionally, but the one thing that I could see as well is that they are not taking us as patients holistically, and especially see that you are not eating, you are plowing, etc. It's still a very lonely place and a very difficult place. And those parts, I know that there are apps that do it, but for me that was also another learning. Again, similar to the previous one, it's there is a tech part and there is also a human part to it, and taking care and taking into account the psyche, the mental health of the patients as it goes. It's not just about showing brute numbers, curves, next steps in the program, etc., or even kind of vanilla motivation and pop-up purpose. It's just not enough. There is really this part that, as a part of recovery, we as patients are also on an emotional roller coaster, and that's something that we need also to consider as we are providing a digital health solution. It's about taking the patient holistically. So that was the second part. Then, continuing with companion apps, one thing that I was starting realizing after 6 months of recovery, trying to get back in shape, following the data, as I said, roller coaster, ups and downs, good moments, difficult moments. But I could see that as I was reaching the end of 2021, I was simply reaching a plateau for a long time, unlike the ones before, and I was not basically reaching or even close to reach levels that of fitness that I was expecting to reach. And here again, being trying to walk the talk and being an analyst by training, I thought, okay, I need to take all the variables about my health. So I started running I'm not at the shape I was before. There are different elements. Let's take and try to isolate them one by one and see which are the ones, hypothesis after hypothesis, that might have an impact. And one of the variables that was very different from late 2021 compared to late 2020 when I was running 1,000 kilometers is, well, 1 year of lockdown, of not being able to exercise as much as before. Certainly also the frustration and the difficulties that were going with the long COVID, the mental stress, etc. Well, you are basically getting much more calories than you burned in the previous situation. And I had definitely put on some COVID weight. So one hypothesis was, well, I cannot exercise as before. It's a clear variable. I have COVID weight that might actually be impacting my performance. So here, trying again to experiment and to use and leverage those different apps, etc. I thought, yeah, let's download some of those weight management apps that are around and experience how they are working, how do they work, and are they helping patients? What is the UX? What is the journey that we have? So I had a couple in parallel signed up to different type of programs to see how it would be going. I will be very frank. I was highly skeptical about those when I started. I will also say that what I'm saying here is just my personal experience, and I know that other people might have very different experience with those apps. But actually, it worked in terms of outcome. It worked extremely well for me. So much faster, and actually, I lost the COVID weight much faster than I expected. I had put conservative objectives, and by simply following those programs and without too much pain, it worked well. But also an interesting learning for me, because the learning is not does it work or not. It works for some people, it doesn't work for some other. But here, thinking again about UX and the complexity of designing health apps is that I quickly saw like, oh, okay, I'm using those programs first. Okay, this one is suiting me better. But there were many components that got on my nerves very quickly. And like, oh, I wish I could only use that, and get rid of all those other elements, etc. And some of those other modules are modules that might be working supremely well for other people, etc. So that's really an element that was interesting, and I try still nowadays to take into account when we are working and partnering with startups to devise solution. Is how can we ensure that the journey that patients will have is as personal as possible, is as customizable as possible. Ideally, also proactively learning from the behavior in the app, like the patient is always dismissing those screens, so that's certainly something that might be working for them. So let's offer less of that and more of that, which makes definitely the design and the development more complex. But I think that it's very important if we want to ensure that patients stay engaged on the long term. Those are long-term programs. And one thing I would say objectively, if I hadn't been trying them out, so more in an experimental mode, and I had just been, oh, I'm using that as a patient, I certainly would have stopped. I would have dropped out much earlier, because some functionalities, for instance, for me, one thing that I absolutely didn't want and didn't enjoy was more the community part. So, receiving tons of message for people that are in the same cohort, and, words of encouragement, cheering, etc. That was something that I was just considering and bugging me as noise. it was important for me to be able to dismiss it, when for other people, this is actually the crucial part of the program, etc. So this ability to design customizable journeys, to adapt the journey for the patient is really crucial for any type of companion app if we want to ensure that we will not have high dropout rates, because high dropout rates means lesser health outcome. So an interesting part of the learnings. Now we are reaching the end. You see that we are now reaching summer 2022. So we are getting back to the bring your own data. So basically, as I was saying, I was trying to work one hypothesis, one variable after the other, and despite losing my COVID weight and even some more, going back to exercise was not working out. So here, really, the part that was getting very, very difficult was I was starting to lack any type of additional options. So I thought, it's time again to get back to my HCP, to have a new discussion, and to go through a new battery of data. And here, even if I had 18 months of data, and I was hoping that I would be able to bring this data, and things would have changed. In 18 months, things have changed a lot, especially in COVID times. Acceptance of many different things that we thought in healthcare would be rejected had changed. For instance, think home testing. Who would have thought that home testing would be natural? Before 2020, it was science fiction. Now it's very accepted. But here, it was still very, very difficult. I still had to go through the same type of protocols. So, for instance, interestingly, when I brought the data, and the one thing that got my HCP's concerned was the weight loss, even if I was expecting and explaining that it was absolutely normal, it was part of a program, etc. No, they thought that the weight loss was too strong in a too short time. So I had to go through a battery of tests to rule out cancers, etc. When actually following the approach and the data, I think it might have been an overkill, but protocols are built like that. We still need to go through those processes. So protocols are not built to use and to leverage those new technologies. I also thought that being again a data guy and obsessed with data, I was hoping that being able to control it and to share it at different points, it would also prevent running through the same hoops when going for different and additional tests. No, going from one HCP to another, going back to the hospital for clinical research, etc. The data was still retaken at one stage or another. So that's also the point, as I was mentioning before, the entry cost is very, very high. Here, what was perhaps just slightly different, but also it might have been due to some of the frustration I was having along the way, is I had like, no, I'm sorry, I understand, but I know what I'm talking about. So I explained, and I actually almost went through the data later on to explain what I had and that I knew what I was talking about, which finally unlocked the situation and allowed to get to the right treatment. But again, if you need to be a specialist in digital health, and you on top of it, you need to assert your credential to be able to have your data heard, the hurdle will be still way too high. So this is still work in progress. But what I thought, again, just wanted, and I think in those type of events like Next, I think it's really important to see, on one hand, what are the promises of technology, what it can do, what we believe in it, but also see and bring the patient perspective. And here with my very personal and non-replicable journey, I hope I managed to share some of those different aspects. And as I said, I'm a digital health enthusiast. I truly believe in it. I still think that, especially in the early days, it has saved my life. But also, I had so many learnings for me that are impacting me on my day-to-day work, and I think I'm a I'm a better professional thanks to my experience as a patient and really understanding the change management that will go with it. It's all about explaining, showing the value, and it will belong to us as professionals, our providers, solution providers, etc. We cannot only count like the tech will do the work, the science will do the work. No, we need to explain it. We need to educate HCPs. We need to educate patients on what are the pros and cons of this data, but how to use it, create a kind of safe environment where patients are confident to bring their own data and that they would be safe enough not to be dismissed, but also at a more macro element, ensuring that also protocols are adapted to take into account the digital health and wearables providing additional data, etc. Currently, it's not there yet. So really, my parting thoughts is the future is in front of us. It's really bright. It can do so much to improve everyone's life, patient's life, but also HCP's life. If they can rely on this data, their practice would be much easier, and also they will be allowed to focus on more on-point questions. So that would be a huge help for everyone. But definitely, we have a huge amount of I would say it's beyond OCM, because it's not an organization, but it's almost a social change management that we have to do. So this was my very personal journey, those couple of thoughts that go along with them, but hopefully this triggered a couple of interesting thoughts. Again, I apologize for not having been able to attend the panel earlier on and being live with you to take the questions on these presentations, but at least we managed to make it happen. And I'm of course available for anyone who wants to reach out, who wants to ask me questions. I hope that I will be able to be in the chat of the meeting, even if I cannot be in the presenter zone, or you can also reach out to me via LinkedIn. I think my link and my profile is in the program. Thank you very much and wishing you a great end of the meeting.